Hello and welcome to Soulful Thoughts from Ireland. I'm Meghan Dawn, your host, mystic teacher and author of Feminine Courage, remembering your voice and vision through a retelling of our myths and inner stories, meditations with Teresa of Avila, and Sacred Companion, Sacred Community, reflections with Claire of Assisi. Today, we are in for a treat as I will be talking with Andrew Harvey. Andrew is an internationally acclaimed writer, poet, translator, and mystical teacher. He is the author of over 40 books, including Son of Man, The Hope, Way of Passion, Turn Me to Gold, and Savage Grace with Carolyn Baker. He has taught all over the world, given over 20 courses for the Shift Network, and is the founder of the Institute for Sacred Activism. Now, there's the official version, and my unofficial version is Andrew is a dear fellow mystic, a mother lover, a prophetic rebel, and a very sweet, sweet and wise soul. So welcome, Andrew. I'm so happy to be speaking with you today, and thanks for taking time for this conversation.
I am absolutely overjoyed to be with you, and I love your book, Feminine Courage, and I just urge everybody who's listening to buy it, because when it came out, I was sent a copy, and it just got into one gorgeous shape, everything that I've been feeling needed to be communicated to people about the divine feminine and its passionate call to us to stand up in our majesty and do everything we possibly can to preserve the world. So I just want to bow to you and thank you for your beautiful holy work.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for that. So, it just seems very timely, because today in our world, we are all being asked to step into great courage. And the word courage, for those who are etymological buffs like myself, it comes from the Old French courage and the Latin cor, meaning of the heart. But today, for me, courage seems to ask us not only to come from the heart, but also to come from the fullness of our body.
Yes.
So, standing in that grounded presence, and each one of us having the courage to actually become an aspect or face of the mother or feminine courage itself. So it seems to me that anything short of this mother's courage at this time will leave us bereft and fearful.
I think you're so right. I think, though, how I see it is that the universe is a sacred marriage, and we're in the time of the sacred marriage, the union of the highest masculine with the highest feminine. But without the mother being restored in her fullness and majesty and glory, there cannot be a sacred marriage. There's a poem by Kabir, and it's just a few lines, but it sums up everything I really believe is going on. And Kabir says, "My father is the absolute Godhead, and my mother is the embodied Godhead. And I am their divine child, dancing for them both on their burning dance floor." And if you really dive into that poem, what it gives you is a vision of the new kind of human being that is being born at this moment. A human being who's connected to the transcendent light, but also totally connected, heart, mind, soul, and body, to the creation, to being embodied. And when that fusion takes place in a human being, whether male or female, they are born into their authentic divine humanity. And when you're born into your authentic divine humanity, through the grace of the embodied mother, the embodied divine, you are by nature free and absolutely committed to sacred action on every level to save the planet and save humanity, and really bring in a wholly new way of being and doing everything, because we've reached a massive evolutionary crisis, which could easily lead to our extinction. But if you step back, what you see is that this huge evolutionary crisis is a global dark night. And for any true mystic who knows about the global dark night, you know that terrible though it is, it can also be the birth canal of something utterly astounding. So all my work now is devoted to inviting people to do three things. First of all, accept that we are in a terminal apocalyptic crisis, which demands that we change our way of being and doing everything, and that we cannot get out of it, and we cannot get out of it by magical thinking or pretending it's not there or pretending that there'll be a savior figure that can come and rescue us. All of that is horseshit. We have to face it. The second thing that we need to face is that this is a global dark night, mystical evolutionary process. The human race, as it has been, is simply incapable of rising to this great challenge. What we need to do is to open our entire beings to the tumultuous and turbulent and glorious grace of the Mother, so that we can be transformed by her, so that we can rise with brilliance and with courage and with passion together in a worldwide movement of love in action. That's the horror of the dark night, but also the promise of the dark night. So the situation as it is doesn't make me despair. I know, I've been thinking and feeling about it. I knew it would come. My whole work has been prophesying it. Now it's here. Everything I do is about helping people get the tools to really participate in this great evolutionary shift, allow themselves to be born into their divine human splendor, allow themselves to learn how to dance as the divine child of the Father Mother, and arm themselves with passionate courage to go forward and risk everything for the greatest adventure of all, the birth of a new world out of the ashes of the old.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you tell us, if you feel to, what are you personally finding the most, that you're needing the most courage for at this time?
I think what I'm being most deeply hurt and depressed by in my soul is the growth of authoritarianism all over the world, and especially in America, because America could very easily go fascist. Trump did such a horrific number on the American psyche, on the American institutions, that now we're facing the very real prospect of a fascist America. And a fascist America would be more dangerous than any of the other fascist creations in Germany and in Russia and in Cambodia. And if America goes fascist, there will be absolutely no hope of global unity to deal with the absolutely shattering problems that are erupting all together right now. The pandemic, which is still raging out of control, the enormity of the climate, which is collapsing, and they go on and on. So what I need courage for most is to believe that there are enough people who are passionate about democracy, who understand that democracy, with all its flaws, is a divine gift, is a way in which the mother's sense of equality, the mother's sense of interdependence, the mother's sense of every human being being valuable and lovable and worthy of legal protection is enshrined. And that's what I'm hoping, and that's what I'm working for. But given the enormity of what's going on, you just have to beg for that courage every day to go on believing, to go on fighting, to go on truly, truly hoping, sometimes against hope, that there are enough people who've done enough work to be brave enough to stand up to this tsunami of lies and this tsunami of crazy hatred and division.
Yeah.
What are you finding that you need the courage for?
I think it's a very similar sense of having that courage to maintain a faith in humanity, that we will rise. That is it, because there are times, where I've felt, we're going down,
right.
And yet, and I think that you touch on this in the book of Savage Grace, yet even if we are going down, each and every one of us need to do what we are here to do.
Right.
No matter whether it makes any difference or not in the long run.
It will make an enormous difference to the quality of our own lives. So when you talk about feminine courage, as you do so beautifully in your book, what's required now is a very special, in a way, very new kind of courage. Courage for its own sake, whatever happens. It's a courage to stand up and give your gifts and pour yourself out in love and in loving action with no agenda, with no fake magical thinking that it's going to change everything or save the planet, but out of deep love for the divine and deep love for humanity and deep wisdom about your own life, because you'll only be able to thrive in joy if you claim your sacred mission and live it out in courage. Even if you die at the side of a ditch, or you're shot, or you're put in a camp, or you just nothing works because humanity's gone too crazy, you will find that you will live a far more joyful life enacting with courage the truth of your own nature and its passion for justice and harmony in the world. It's as simple and terrible and amazing as that.
I know. And isn't that essentially the mystic journey?
It is.
It's
especially the mystic journey in terms of the mother, because the mother is asking her lovers to love anyway and to stand up for her whatever happens, and to advocate for the animals, and to be in the marches for climate change, and to lift their voices against division and craziness and racism and the whole madness of authoritarianism, and to truly stop just being sweet lovers on their cushions, but actually be born as sacred activists, beings who are prepared to put the love that they know she's showering on them, and the love that they know is behind her appearance in and as everything, into real action.
Yeah.
Because only that could possibly turn the world around, and only that will be able to birth the new divine human, because the divine human is born through deep mystical experience, but also the commitment to put that experience into radical, urgent, wise, inspired action.
Yeah. Now, there's a wonderful quote from Carl Jung: "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order."
Absolutely.
And this, there's a teaching in the Kabbalistic tradition that even, shall we say, those beings or the energies that are very, very negative, in some way, there's an understanding that they too are serving the mother.
Of course they are.
Which is so beautiful.
Serving her, but it's up to us to understand their service.
Yeah.
It's very important to understand that the eruption of the dark energies all over the world is not a sign that humanity is inevitably damned and corrupt, but a sign that humanity has to go through a massive transformation to be able to overcome and integrate those dark energies. So they are serving the great alchemy of the potential transfiguration of humanity by just nakedly appearing and compelling all of us to accept that they are real, that they really do threaten the whole future, and that we collude with them. So we have to go through a momentous act of clarity with great faith to be able to be guided forward. So in the end, the most terrible things become your greatest friends, because they compel you to go on a far deeper transformation than love and light would ever have compelled you to do.
Exactly, exactly. And, you know, I feel, you know, I talk about the crone of dissolution and the dark wisdom in feminine courage. And I feel like at this time, there's this crone, this dissolution that's happening. Also, she wants to dissolve all fear. She wants to dissolve all a fear that is living in humanity. And it seems that that also is a big part of rising, you know, along with the social justice and the fear of the fascism, the fear of this, but deep fears within the human being themselves. What are they truly afraid of? What are they truly afraid of? And there is a beautiful alchemical text, and it says, all things are brought together and all things are dissolved again. For nature turned toward itself transforms itself.
Right.
And that's what it feels like. We are being turned towards ourselves in order to transform ourselves, along with nature, along with the nature of humanity.
Absolutely. But fear isn't always an enemy. I think that we're not afraid enough in some ways. Most of the people I meet are still comatose and in a dream of denial about what's happening. So there are fears that are holy and are her kinds of instruction. If we're not afraid that we're going to continue as we are and destroy the climate, we're not awake. If we're not afraid that our apathy and laziness will cause authoritarian governments to rise, we're not awake. If we're not afraid that the current system of inequality will continue and create a slave class which will be horrifically violent and angry for obvious and human reasons, we're not awake. But if we can go deep and discover the deathless within us through her grace, we won't be paralyzed by those fears, we'll be galvanized by those fears and galvanized to act. So it's a very subtle state that's necessary. The 95% of people are not scared enough and are not doing nearly enough. So what's necessary is to come in with a sword and a rose. The sword is truth, saying, for God's sake, wake up, the time is now, and look what will happen if we don't act. And the rose, which is her rose, is the rose of gnosis, the rose of truth and deathless awareness, which when you allow yourself to be penetrated by it, makes you unafraid to do whatever you're summoned to do to help in the great birthing process of a new humanity. That's how I see it.
Sure. Yeah. No, it is. I wanted to speak on this a little bit too, from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, where the question is asked, what is matter? Will it last forever? The teacher answered, all that is born, all that is created, all the elements of nature are interwoven and united with each other. All that is composed shall be decomposed. Everything returns to its roots. Matter returns to the origins of matter. Those who have ears, let them hear. And on some ways, I'm feeling, you know, in many ways, everything is returning to its roots. Everything that is being composed is decomposing. You know, it's this matter, not only just physical matter, but the whole matter of life. It feels like we're being asked, no, now we're returning to deeper roots of who we really are.
That's true, but there are two versions of this in the Indian tradition. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
On the one hand, because we're obviously in the last stages of Kali Yuga, and there are two potential versions of Kali Yuga. One
Right.
is that everything returns to its root
Mm-hmm.
and it's then reconstructed. And the other, which is what I happen to believe, is that the returning to the root actually transfigures matter and takes it to another level of embodied power. And if you look, after all, the teacher in that dialogue is Jesus. And Jesus's ultimate statement is not the crucifixion, it's the resurrection and the ascension and Pentecost. So here you have matter as it could become once it's been dissolved and recreated by the source. So what I see, and what I see is really what the evolutionary mystics have always been talking about, is that there would be this period of total chaos. Yeah. But that the secret order appearing in it is an order of transfigured matter, of matter taken to another level of embodied intensity.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely go with that version of the story, absolutely. And and I think that
is the version of the story. That is what Jesus did. That's what Mary Magdalene and Jesus created together. That's the true grail. The grail is not an object. The grail is the transfigured body that holds the sacred blood, the resurrected body. And I believe that the second coming experience is not the return of Jesus, but the rising of the golden yeast of Christ consciousness in millions of people through extreme suffering, through a worldwide crucifixion, which doesn't end in the annihilation of matter, but in the transfiguration of matter. Mm-hmm. That is the secret purpose of the Divine Mother, to birth out of this dissolution a new humanity, not on any other level, not on any other star, but right here, the next level of evolutionary progress.
Mm-hmm. And so that really takes us into faith.
Yes. Oh God, yes.
It takes us into faith. And so I want to ask.
It takes us into faith, but it actually, and of course faith is essential, but it also takes us into deep sacred mystical experience.
Right.
Because faith with it by itself is very important, very powerful, but unless it's grounded in the awe and ecstasy and amazement of authentic mystical experience, it won't take you far enough in a crisis like this. Because having faith in the overall beauty of providence is going to be deeply shaken by the shattering, rending process of what is about to unfurl and what's already unfurling. But if you have enough inner experience of the mother's capacity to endlessly transform you, then you can have faith in the extremity of this birthing process.
Right. Well, this was, some questions that I asked recently in a class. What does faith really mean to you?
Right.
Because what does it mean? I hope that we've outgrown, the immature sense of faith. And what I was intrigued by was when I asked that question myself, what does faith mean to me? It really came forward with the ability to love. And I was like, wow, that is very interesting. And that feels to me, it's active. It's the ability to love no matter what is happening. It's the ability, not only have I received that love from the Divine Mother, but now I take that love and I have the ability to love as the Divine Mother here on earth.
Yes.
And that I think is a question for all of us right now is what does faith really mean to you? What does it mean to you? And what do you have faith in? What do you have faith in? And what came to me for that was, I have faith in the goodness of life. And that felt beautiful because it felt it was underpinning everything that's going on now, no matter what I was seeing, no matter how bleak or dark, I could feel this. I still have this faith in the goodness of life.
I love
So,
what you're saying. Yes, I love both of them. I think also, I would just add, I think faith is also faith in the meaning of inspired creativity and action. Even in a disastrous extreme situation like the one we're in, to have faith that every conversation that's filled with love is actually doing something. Every book you write that has deep sacred meaning is doing something. Every Zoom that you do that has some hope in it and some encouragement in it reaches people who can be sustained by it. So that's faith is very much bound up with continuing to pour yourself out in creative love and creative action.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll also add this. There was a third question I added to that, and it was, do you have, and it's really kind of coming on what you're saying here, do you have faith in yourself that you can stand in the fullness of your presence in these times and the times that are coming? And I was, and for me, I actually faltered at that, and I could feel a part of myself shrink back, like, actually, no, I don't have that faith. And I had to look at that. I'm like, really? Like, really? You've been through already a lot. And it was really what it was, Andrew, was just some unresolved trauma that was making me shrink back into myself. And therefore, I couldn't stand in the fullness of my presence. So it was actually a beautiful question to ask and to expose that unhealed trauma and to bring that forward, because, we need to be, as we're saying, standing in the fullness of our presence for not only now, but what is to come. Because
absolutely. But maybe I love what you say, but perhaps we could look at it from another angle. I think that a certain humility before what is going to be demanded of us is necessary. So I don't think anyone who is awake at this moment, who realizes what is about to unfold, cannot be in a certain kind of trembling before the future. There's nobody I know who isn't idiotic or in denial, who isn't shaken to their core. So that's the first thing. I think being shaken is not a sign that you're weak or traumatized. It can be, but it can also be a sign that you are not evading reality.
Yeah.
Second thing is that if you've had enough inmost mystical experience, you know one glorious truth. And that is, you will not be on your own if you decide to try more and more intensely to stand in the majesty and truth of your authentic being. She will always be there for you to feed you the grace, the intelligence, the passion, the courage, the strength to go forward. So being shaken to me is absolutely human, but then having been shaken, turn to her and she will give you what you need to be able to grow braver by the minute.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Saint Teresa of Avila, where she talks about, some days she said, I would feel that I had all the courage in the world and I could achieve anything. And then she said, and there were other days that I had no courage at all and I felt like I couldn't do a thing. And so she said she walked in these two sort of feelings, but always she was given exactly what she needed in the moment.
I feel. I feel if we really invite humanity to humble up, face what's going on, realize that without constant grace, we're all going to be shattered, and then offer humanity the tools, the practical tools of adoration, of prayer, of sacred action that constantly enable grace to fill us with more and more courage, then there is a great hope. But it will require a very odd and amazing mixture of radical humility, true trembling, true vulnerability, deep sacred practice, and coming together in sacred action.
Right, right. Yeah, it is that, because I was contemplating, this courage, and also, courage, of course, we need when we go definitely into the unknown, but it was also too, I felt this, what you're talking here, the vulnerability,
Yes.
And I felt the absolute need for the comfort of the mother.
Yes.
The comfort. And that's what I'm finding is most important, to really spend time receiving that comfort, because that shores me up and gives me the courage to go back out. So I'm wondering for you, what gives you comfort right now in your life?
Well, she gives me comfort through the Rosary. I think if I could just ask everybody in the world to say the Rosary, whether you believe in Christianity or not, you'd find it a prayer that would really connect you with the great peace, the great love of the Mother. Other things give me comfort. A lot of things, actually. My cat gives me comfort. The rapture of the relationship with my cat that has unfolded during COVID. I'm immensely inspired by great music because I've been a musician all my life, and I'm beginning to understand the great mystical transmissions through the great composers and their passion and elevation and their immense beauty. That gives me comfort. I get great comfort from the great mystical poets like Rumi and Kabir, whom I've spent so much time on. And I get great comfort from authentic sacred friendship, because this is a time in which the pain and the horror of what we're living through has brought certain people much closer together and given friendship a wholly new level of revelation and inspiration. So I don't feel at all bereaved of comfort. I feel that the most important thing that any of us can do is to stay inspired by prayer to her, by meditation on her, but also by celebrating the glory of what she's given us, the glory of nature, the glory of art, the glory of great music, the glory of divine sexuality, the glory of deep sacred friendship. A wonderful friend of mine called Linda Tucker, who is the protectress of the white lions and is an extraordinary sacred activist. She went to her great teacher, her great African shamanic teacher, and said, "Things are terrible. What should I do?" And the great lady who taught her said, "Celebrate." So I get great comfort from celebrating each moment, celebrating each meal, celebrating each walk, celebrating each breath.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that this is really important for all of our listeners to hear, because I do know a lot of people, are feeling depressed, are feeling anxious, and they're losing that joyousness and that ability to celebrate, and especially I think with the lockdowns, because day after day after day was rolling.
God, yes.
There weren't those times of celebration. So I think it's and this again to me comes too from the mystic path, because something so important is discipline in the mystic path. Right, and rising above what is just what you may be feeling in that moment, or ordinarily might push you down, is that beautiful discipline of the spirit to raise you up. And as you were saying, through your practices, and I think that here our bodies are important. For me, dance is
dance. Essential.
Yeah.
I love sacred dance. I've always been a passionate dancer, and there's a great teacher, Banafsheh Sayad, who is a great dancer herself and has this wonderful vision of Dance of Oneness, and has a great love for Mary and for Mary Magdalene. And she's helping people all over the world in this time just celebrate through their bodies and feel the joy that comes when your body's celebrating. Right. Ground yourself in that joy and courage will come.
Right, right. Now, I believe that coming up, you're going to be writing a book on Mary Magdalene and the other wise women. And you're also working on a translation at the moment. Do you want to speak a little on that?
Well, thank you so much. I've been working very hard through COVID. And one thing I did was to do another volume of Kabir. I did a first volume called Turn Me to Gold. And now I'm doing a 365 day by day translation, 365 new translations. It's going to be called Engoldenment, because for me, Kabir is one of the two great universal mystical poets. And I'm very absorbed and awed and impassioned by him. He's naked, he's frightening, he's exalted, he's absolutely real, and he's an essential voice for our time. I've also completed another 365 translations of, to my mind, the greatest of the women Christian mystics, who is Hadovich of Antwerp, not very well known, but she was a Beguine of the 11th century. I've been obsessed with her for years. I learnt how to read Middle High Dutch and have finished a huge book, which I'm going to send you. It's called Love is Everything. Yeah. She was a Rumi-like poet of the intensity and extremity of love, and a very great master. And so that has been a passion to restore her to the glory of her true place with Teresa, the highest level of women Christian mystics. Yeah. And I'm also now just starting on a book which I've been incubating for many years on Mary Magdalene, and not just on what I believe to be the real Mary Magdalene, rewriting her into the story and re-envisaging the whole of Christianity through her presence and through her ecstatic, divine, total relationship, heart, mind, soul, and body with Jesus, but also celebrating the women who adored her, knew that she was a source of infinite revelation, and didn't buy the fact that she was some prostitute, the boys' club version. And if you look in all the work of the 12 women I've selected as the other great 12, we have the boys' club 12, we need the women in there. And I've selected the great lineage, the Magdalene lineage is my book. So it's going to have, of course, certain chapters on Teresa, on Elizabeth of the Trinity, Therese of Lisieux, Sister Faustina, the great ones, the great women who kept alive this sacred, passionate transmission through their own inner connection with Mary Magdalene.
Absolutely, absolutely, they did. And here I'll say, I think you'd love this, that the book Feminine Courage is actually based on from the Sophian tradition, the transfiguration experience of
right.
And so that here she is, the full embodiment of the feminine here on earth.
Absolutely.
I think that this, as you were saying earlier, this is where we're going. And I have a prayer here.
We did it together. Without her, he would never have been able to. And I believe that he appears to her in the garden after the resurrection, as if to show her what this immense transfiguration adventure that they've been on has produced.
Right.
And I had this experience when I went to her cave, which was about 20 years ago, which completely changed my understanding of everything. And in the cave, somebody was talking about how she spent a lot of time in penance. And I thought, this is total rubbish. She wasn't in penance. She was in ecstasy. She'd seen the resurrected beloved, and she herself was working in those years on the transfiguration of the body. She already knew something deep about it, but it was an endless expanding process. And then it came to me that was the Grail.
Right.
Wonderful stories of her having children. They may have had children or not had children. They're very interesting, but they're not nearly as important as the two of them together starting this
Yeah.
family of the transfigured ones.
Yeah, yeah. And isn't it incredible, really, when you think that we're still on that journey that they began?
Oh, yes,
You
because
know, humanity.
it's an endless, we've, by her being written out and by sexuality being taken out, the door was closed to this experience, except to a very few amazing adepts who lived it throughout Christian mystical history, because there were transfigured beings. My own teacher was going through the transfiguration process.
Right.
Without the mother being celebrated completely in union with the transcendent Father, and without Mary Magdalene being there as a female Christ truth in dynamic relationship with Jesus, this is simply not accessible.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's
yeah.
accessible now.
It is, indeed it is. I have a prayer here I'd like to read. It's actually a prayer to owl wisdom, you know, because as we know, our feathered friends and our animal friends bring their wisdom, and it's also really to the crone. And it speaks a little to what we're talking about as well.
Well, she became the radiant crone, didn't she, Magdalena? She lived all the different aspects of the divine feminine.
She did. She lived every single face of the mother, you know, of what was needed. And that's what I find so beautiful, that is what is available to us, that we essentially are these incredible energetic shapeshifters.
Yes.
Who bring in whatever energy of the mother is needed in that moment. And you know, as you have tasted it and I have tasted it, it's nothing short of the divine experience in this humanity coming alive. And it's incredibly, how does one say, incredibly powerful and humbling and expansive all at once.
Exactly.
So a prayer to the crone owl: take me into your dark wisdom of the night. Teach me to fly with your silence and grace, your precision and sight. Teach me to hear the still small voice. Teach me how to let it grow until it fills my soul with the thunderous sound of truth and the brilliance of the new moon seed. Teach me true redemption, the redemption of illuminated bodies and hearts and minds, knowing nothing is irretrievable, nothing needs suffer in the dark silence. Let there be light, O crone of the light, night, let there be light.
It's beautiful. I love it. I love you bringing in the body first too, because that's the restoration that's most needed.
It is indeed. So I think that on that note, Andrew, I just want to thank you so much for this time. Pleasure. And I'd invite people to look up andrewharvey.net for upcoming events and sacred pilgrimages next year, God willing.
I hope so, God willing, absolutely.
I know, right?
Let's hope.
Let's hope. And all of Andrew's publications. So please do look there, andrewharvey.net. And please check my website, megandon.life, where you will find a 100-minute video on feminine courage, where we look at grief, faith, and joy. And this is bringing in messages from the Black Madonna of Poland and also the archangels. So really a beautiful video there. And of course, you can read more in my book, Feminine Courage. There are other podcasts. One recently on this Black Madonna is Healing Alchemist and my interaction with Our Lady of Chechenova in Poland. Wow. So really some lovely podcasts. And this will be airing in time. There's an online course I'm doing. My own work that I've been working on is a book on death and dying, and an online course, Your Life and Death Journey, Part 1, Letting Go into Love, will be coming up the next 3 Saturdays, and you can join in with that. And all sessions are live and recorded. So I wish you
God bless
all,
you.
well, thank you, and you too. So I wish you all the utmost courage of the crone to be with your personal and the collective dissolution, and may faith and vision show their face to you through the eyes of the mother and the daughter. Be well, be strong, Slan.